present us Ihar Ivanoǔ, the director of Skaryna Press Publishing House in London, friend of Vera Rich, librarian and publisher. And the topic is Vera's Manifold publishing.
That's right. Thank you. I'll take from Pavel naturally, because I also was a student just a couple of years behind Pavel, and that's how I met Vera in the Belarusian community. However, I met Vera, and we called her Vera in Belarusian way, so not Vera, exactly the same, just name, just pronounced it differently. And actually I saw her in Minsk first time. I probably was in the last year of school, maybe I was in the first year of university, don't remember exactly. There was a big international Belarusian diaspora event in Minsk, and she came as part of that event, and I met her in the Belarusian Greek Catholic chapel in Minsk, and I was fascinated at I'd never heard of her before. I understood that she's a foreigner, but she could sing Belarusian in the Greek Catholic liturgy, and there were just, the people who could do it in Minsk, you could count on fingers of two hands, and you see somebody from another universe. And then, of course, in 1999, I met her in London, in the Belarusian community, and I was a student, extremely poor student, but very lucky student to get education. And that's her role in my life. She was absolutely instrumental in supporting me as a student. She proofread pretty much all of my essays. My English was extremely bad at that time, but I had to start writing almost straight away. She patiently often was sleeping in the armchair in my room in 31 Holden Road while I was writing my essays until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to submit it by 9 o'clock in the morning. And she would just proofread it in the matter of 2 hours before I would go to classes. A bit later, I was when she would get ill, she would ask me to go for medication, and as Pavel absolutely correctly, and Alison absolutely correctly mentioned her disbelief in anything else but whiskey and Lucozade. But she was not an alcoholic, please don't, we must not misread this mentionings of alcohol in her life as she was not alcoholic. She knew exactly what she wanted, needed, and she worked for her benefit, and that was either Black Daniels or Mills and Lucozade. That's the first time I heard about Lucozade. And of course I studied then about Lucozade and their marketing reinvention, but she spoke about it as a medication, and then it became sports drink. She treated it as a medication. Anyway, meanwhile, between all of this, Vera was spending lots of time in the Belarusian community in the student house with us, and she was not only helping us with essays, not only me, but other guys as well. We're getting assistance with her with studies, but also she involved us into her publishing. She worked up, I have to say that Vera was an extremely generous person. As Pavel already mentioned, she wasn't a rich person, and she lived from one occasion to another occasion. She never kept the money, to my best knowledge, but she always had money for us, for students. She would give job to us to clean her house, and very often, most of the time, the first 3-4 years of my life in London, that was my only income, regular income. And of course, those occasions of cleaning her house were occasions to talk to Vera and have lunch with her or dinner. Very often she would take us students to a local pub or to call for takeaway, Indian takeaway. and she always paid for that. So she awarded us with jobs, additional lunch and dinner, and also wonderful conversations. When we didn't have lunch, she didn't clean her house. Very often I would help her to walk to the bus stop with her heavy rucksack. I don't know, her rucksack always was massively heavy. I don't know what she was, I mean, I know what she was carrying, various books, etc., but there must be something else involved. So I carried her rucksack often, and half of the time I wasn't sure what stories she was talking to me. They were, it's about her intellect and references, cultural references I just couldn't pick up. I didn't have that British context then to follow all the stories that she wanted to tell me. And sometimes she wouldn't talk to me, she would just talk to herself. And then I worked out she was writing poetry. She was talking in this mumbling. That was actually her poetry she was writing. Now, she worked out very quickly that I was absolutely crazy about publishing, and she had her own publishing passion. So I'm so grateful she involved me into one of the passions of her life. So, where is that? Please hold on. I'll bring another publication. Very early on, in 1960s, Vera, together with her mother, they published a poetry magazine, Manifold, and apparently it was very, very successful. The circulation was massive. And then there was a long break after her mother passed away. Vera took break. And then she returned to publishing Manifold in 1990s, at the end of 1990s. And you know what, back then I didn't realize what a volume it was. I mean, volume of publications. I'm just looking at number 29. It was published in 1998, spring. And I looking at 49 issue. That's the last one that was published during her lifetime. And it was 2005. So 7 years of publications, and she published 20 issues, so it must be every 3 months she was publishing. I didn't read poetry back then. Okay? So she introduced me to the idea of poetry magazine, to poets, and I was fascinated that poetry magazine is not only poetry, it's also about poetry. There were letters, there were discussions, there were competitions, there were kind of essays, reports, etc. So that was the first introduction. For me, it was a first introduction to poetry publishing. That's what I got from Vera. Now, how it worked, you can see that it looks pretty basic to our time, but back then actually it was technologically very advanced. Skaryna library had a very expensive photocopier. That's because Father Alexander Natsan, who was mentioned here already several times, also had publishing passion. Those passions of Vera and Father Alexander, they didn't coincide, they didn't cross over, but they coexisted. So Vera, and here we need to learn about Vera something, that she was extremely resourceful person, extremely resourceful. She found out that there was a photocopy in the library, very rare, expensive device back then, and Father Alexander was happy to allow it to be used for publishing Vera's publications, and that's what financially allowed this magazine to exist, because to produce it commercially on High Street would cost several times more than she paid something symbolic to the library. And then she paid us students also to do that job. Also, not a lot of money, but that's what allowed this magazine to exist. Now, I've learned about Vera, that she was a resourceful person. And that's what publisher has to be, a resourceful person. See opportunities, not to disregard what is available to you. but also be friends with people. So she befriended those who could help her dreams to come true. Father Alexander, students, probably most importantly poets around her. Manifold didn't exist as just a magazine. It was a whole community of people. I remember Alison I met very, very early, but Alison was a part of quite a significant people. It was a performing groups, if I remember correctly. Manifold Voices was called.
Yes, reunite. We are reuniting one night only on the 9th.
Thanks God. Yes. So there was a photocopy in the library. There were students 2 houses down, and in our student house we had a guillotine, which I remember cost £50, I think, at that time. It was a lot of money, so it's a guillotine. You cut it here. And then there was a stapler, which cost, I believe, £20, which allowed us to do this. You know what? I loved doing it for Vera. The money was second and third consideration. More importantly, it was the whole process of publishing something with somebody who loves doing it, passionate, and she managed to share that passion certainly with me. And that's a magazine. Alongside the magazine, she was publishing a library of chapbooks, of small brochures, poetry collections. Some were the result of competitions that Manifold ran, and most of them were just collections of poets. So I can see Hilary, I can see Elizabeth Kay, I remember Wolfgang Sommery. I also visited his house and was fascinated with Apple Mac, which I fell in love that colorful computer straight away. Some covers, most of the covers were designed by friends of Manifold. A couple of them were designed by us, by me, in the student house. And there was a conversation about the technological advancement. If you just bear with me a second, I'll share with you. I'll share with you a website which didn't exist long. So that's people in Zoom C. Now we will see. So at the very end of Manifold existence in 2004, 2005, I got passionate also about writing web code, web design, doing web design. And that was the first and last attempt of creating a website for the Manifold poetry magazine, magazine of new poetry. I believe it was one of very few poetry magazine websites back then. Unfortunately, it didn't exist for much longer. But again, I'm very grateful to Vera for letting me to practice my passion within her realm, her life. Yeah, I certainly underappreciated Vera's role in my life, but then, busy student, dealing with his personal matters. Looking back now, I'm so grateful that I met Vera in my life, and some of them I met because of Vera. Thank you. Yeah.